Hey, this video is going to be a little bit different. We are, I know most of my videos are goofy, me playing games or talking about random stuff like anime waifus and tier lists for them. But this one's going to be on a more serious note. I'm going to continue doing my regular videos, but I still want to go over this and just have people give it food for thought, or at least a moment to think about. Reading the title, which is Modernity is Dead, and Postmodernity Will Restart the Cycle. My friend Derek and I will just take turns going through and giving examples of what we are talking about.
Now, for those of you who have never heard the term postmodernity, it simply means what comes after that, which is modern. And modern means to progress away from that which is traditional or pre-modern.
For example, a pre-modern woman is one who acts as the other half of man, one who creates man in her own magical way through childbirth and simultaneously has the respect of people in her community just for doing that. Every man around her, by virtue of her feminine wisdom, just know that she has a purpose and that's how things work. Examples of pre-modern women are like Mother Mary, who inspired Galadriel from Lord of the Rings. Yes, it is pre-modern woman, and I'm talking about the one from the original books, not the Amazon. The Amazon stuff is an example of a postmodern. But another good example is Joan of Arc, who inspired Eowyn. A modern woman, however, must progress beyond those traditional values, figure out what she needs to be, what her full potential is, and to use all her power without much thought or wisdom to what it can cause or do to others as long as it benefits her. And honestly, as a postmodern society who has just progressed too far, it just can't distinguish what is a woman at all. But if I could describe each phase of this cycle in one word, pre-modern is tradition, modern is progression, and postmodern is confusion. Now that everyone is caught up, I can get really into the nitty-gritty from how progression from a societal standpoint is dead. And how we have progressed to a point beyond reason, a state of confusion that causes us to constantly find ourselves overthinking and feeling any traditional value must be wrong or changed in some way. And I know I have hammered on, well, is it women so far? But that's not what this video is about. It's just traditional values and how modernism is progression, postmodernism is confusion.
Now that we're in a state of confusion, or what is known as the postmodern era, we find that it is hard to decide upon anything. And as a society, we will not be able to function and we will destroy ourselves or be destroyed by this state of chaos. Now, most of you are probably thinking, how do you know that? What knowledge are you privy to that makes you so sure of the outcome? And my answer to that is very simple. It has already happened.
From the earliest standpoint that I can state with certainty, and honestly that everyone will be able to understand, the Mesothelic era is considered the last stage of a tradition or a way of life that is known as hunter-gathering. And the Neolithic era was the end of that tradition, and it introduced farming, the domestication of animals, and living in a settlement. This is what makes an age. The progression of a society up to a certain point until what was earlier progressed upon is now tradition, or is now destroyed.
The new tradition, in this case, being settlements and civilizations. Then you have the next stage, the Chalcolithic, or more commonly known as the Copper Age, where the age-old tradition of stone tools is replaced by copper tools, and soon thereafter, for some civilizations, came the Bronze Age and then the Iron Age. A constant progression all the way up to now, where steel is traditional and plastic is progressive and, ironically, is causing us to regress in some ways.
In this example, I will use BMW as my scapegoat. Early on, I think any car enthusiast can agree, BMW was producing fabulous and luxurious vehicles that drove well and did well. You would hear about BMW, and if somebody had that sort of vehicle, it was fantastic. They were rich, they were in good standing. Now, part of that still exists today, but I do think that most car enthusiasts would agree BMW stands for big money waster. But there are also some other terms which are a little bit too vulgar to say in this video. But just from what I just said, you can see the cycle. The cars were made, they were made well, better and better. They started progressing. And then confusion as they progressed too far, making cars that are known to break down or fall apart easily. I know I'm picking on BMW here, but they are not the only ones guilty of this type of progression.
Now to focus even further on the cycle of common thought, which is what this entire video is referring to.
The time before the 1300s was a time of great, and some may even argue terrible progression. The Egyptian and Roman empires started to collapse. There were new schools of thought.
But the cycle must restart. Progression came to a halt with the Great Famine that occurred for 2 years between 1315 and 1317, causing massive outbreaks of starvation due to crop failure and a drastic drop in living, healthy cattle and sheep by at least 80%. This starvation induced chaos or confusion would cause a break in traditions, extreme levels of crime, disease, mass death, and worst of all, cannibalism and infanticide. There's a reason why I put those two together because, in other words, people were eating babies, which is extremely messed up. Areas affected by this famine wouldn't be able to remotely recover or return to traditions that would abolish the after-mentioned horrors until at least 1322. Heading back into this peace progression would start again, and commerce and trade would flow.
And I think most of my history nerds who may or may not be on this channel know where this is going. In 1347, when 12 ships from the Black Sea would dock in Messina, this progression would truly halt as the Black Death began swallowing up a third of the population in Europe. Religious and social unrest through the 100 Years' War, the Jacquerie, the Peasants' Revolt, and the Western Schism. But the cycle again continues. Traditions are returned to, and progression readies itself to start again.
Now we hit today. Progression is coming to a grinding halt, where 40 years ago it was believed we would have flying cars. However, we find ourselves debating free will, what racism is, and being obsessed with pronouns and infanticide. Not to be confused with eating babies, this just means abortion. Okay? Just wanted to point that out.
But modernity is the death of tradition. Postmodernity is the need for a tradition to be reestablished or replaced. I'm going to end the script here, if you didn't know we were reading from one. So it can be more raw as far as what we're saying.
Yeah.
And I think both me and Eric can agree that if we do not go back to a tradition, a new tradition is going to be in place.
And maybe that tradition will either be really good or really bad.
We can return to this tradition of being completely independent from the rest of the world, as the United States wanted to be during World War I and World War II. But if we stay with that tradition, like we tried to the last two times, eventually we'll have to get involved, which is already starting to happen with Ukraine, which is the picture that I'm showing here. And I
don't forget about the
picture of
Hamas situation, Syria, the Houthi rebels. Do I need to go on?
No, you do not.
The increasing tensions between Taiwan.
Exactly. But what do we know? We're just to young people who are supposed to inherit everybody's problems.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but we'll end the video here. We wish you all a good day and good night.
Good night, good afternoon, wherever you're
on
from.
this planet we call Earth.